So let's go ahead and get right to tonight's main point. There are 7 propositions on the November ballot, but Prop 26 and 27, they're making history. More than $400 million have been poured into campaigns for and against them. And we have political reporter Morgan Reiner, who's been looking into this for weeks. But Morgan, what's really going on with these props?
Alex, to get to the point, these propositions, which hope to legalize sports betting, are about business. Native American tribes are battling gaming companies for control over what could be another multi-billion-dollar industry. But ads for and against Prop 26 and Prop 27 are bringing up other questions. Is legalizing this industry a way to fight homelessness? What about gambling addiction? And what have casinos already done with gambling profits? To look at what could be in store, we're also looking at the past.
From donations to the fire station.
What did you do before this truck?
We had a severely outdated and, quite frankly, inadequate water tender that we utilized.
To a community health clinic on the way, it's hard to ignore the benefits the town of Esparto in Yolo County has enjoyed since the neighboring Yochadihi Wintu Nation implemented gambling in the 1980s.
It was just tough. I mean, tribes living in poverty.
A stark contrast to what Yochadihi Wintu Nation Chairman Anthony Roberts says life was like growing up.
I'm struggling to make ends meet, not knowing where our next meal was going to come from.
The tribe, which runs the Cache Creek Casino and Resort, is now flooded with cash.
The numbers exactly, we don't usually share those types of things, but I will tell you that it's growing. It's growing tremendously.
60-year California veteran journalist Dan Walters, who has covered the history of casinos in the state, says combined casino tribes make billions.
Billions and billions of dollars a year.
Dozens of tribes are supporting Proposition 26 to legalize in-person sports betting at tribal casinos.
California's Indian tribes vote no on 27.
But let's rewind. How did California get to the point where tribes operate casinos? In 1987, a California tribe won a U.S. Supreme Court case. If the state allows any sort of gambling, at the time bingo parlors, the tribes were allowed to have it on their land too.
They made money and they built better facilities. Within a few years, we're kind of expanding the definition of the court's permission and started putting in a form of slot machine.
Dan Walters reported on the efforts of the California Attorney General at the time, who was trying to shut the casinos down.
State authorities said they were illegal, but they fought over it, continued to have the slot machines, and finally made enough money on the slots, financed some ballot measures in California that gave them a monopoly over almost full casino gambling in California.
In 2000, California voters overwhelmingly supported Proposition 1 to permit tribes to operate slot machines, lottery games, and bank and percentage card games like blackjack.
For the better part of 2 decades have supported tribal gaming here in California on our lands. That's given us the opportunity to become economically viable, to provide health care and education.
Fast forward 22 years and now Californians are presented with a similar gambling question. If sports wagering should become legal in California, who should operate it?
There are a number of ways that ours are better.
Nathan Click is running the Yes on Proposition 27 campaign, which will legalize online sports betting run through large corporations like DraftKings and FanDuel. It also creates a pathway to legalize online betting on non-sporting events like award shows and video games.
But why is Prop 27 being promoted by supporters as a way to fight homelessness?
Prop 27 would, for the first time in state history, create a permanent source of funding for homelessness interventions. These are things like permanent supportive housing.
They've added in what experts call sweeteners, some funding for homelessness, and they also partnered with 3 non-gaming tribes that don't enjoy the same financial benefits that tribes with casinos do.
It's a common thing when people draft ballot measures that they have what they really want, and then they throw in a few goodies on the side so that people would be more willing to vote for it. And it goes back to, think of the lottery initiative back in the 80s. The lottery initiative was sold to the voters on the assumption that, quote, the schools win too. The sum of the money from the lottery would go to the schools.
How much money will Prop 27 provide to homelessness? Authors of the bill are calling it the Homelessness and Mental Health Support Act. 90% of revenue goes out of state. 10% of the revenue goes to the state. After taking out money for fees, what's left of that 10%, 85% is designated for homeless funding. But a small percentage of a large amount is still a lot of money. The Independent Legislative Analyst's Office predicts it will bring in hundreds of millions a year for homelessness.
You know that the state of California has already put billions towards helping solve homelessness, and numbers keep going up. So is there a roadmap of how exactly this money is going to be used?
Absolutely. The state has spent some one-time money, but that's only one-time money. But we haven't had a permanent ongoing funding source. And that's a revenue stream that will help cities and counties plan for the long term.
One of many issues raised with Prop 27, problem gambling. As of right now, 3.7 million Californians experience problem gambling in their lifetime.
Gambling actually does create a high. It creates a dopamine high, but it doesn't create a high that's going to result in you, for example, passing out. Like if you're drinking, eventually you pass out. But people who gamble can do it for days at a time.
Robert Jacobson is the director of the California Council on Problem Gambling. The council is neutral when it comes to gambling propositions. What they do give input on is if propositions will provide funding to help treat addiction that will arise from them if passed.
Proposition 26 currently includes dedicated funding for problem gambling services. Proposition 27 does not.
Proposition 27 does allow the state legislature to decide if they want to allocate money toward problem gambling, but Jacobson fears they won't.
The recurring theme that's going to come through our conversation is not enough research exists.
Tribes have been doing this for a better part of 2 decades. They already have their policies and regulations in place to combat problem gambling.
Let's talk about underage gambling. One ad against Prop 27 claims every digital device will be turned into a sports wagering tool and won't be able to control minors from placing bets. The Yes on Proposition 27 campaign disagrees.
27 has the strictest rules to ensure that those who place bets are over the age of 18. No one will be able to place a bet who is a minor.
More than 30 states legalized online sports betting since the 2018 Supreme Court case allowed them to do so.
The more widespread the marketing for that online gambling and the more exposure that people have to that marketing, ultimately the higher the prevalence rates become, and the speed with which addictions develop and the severity with which addictions develop.
If Proposition 26 is passed, in addition to legalizing sports betting in casinos on Native American land, it includes 4 horse tracks in the state.
Why the horse tracks? Well, by including them, it didn't really cost anything, but it kind of eliminated some potential opposition. The card room people still didn't like it. They still particularly didn't like it because Proposition 26 has a poison pill clause in it that subjects the card rooms to some legal harassment that they otherwise would not have.
In other words, it helps eliminate opposition, creating more of a monopoly.
The measure also, they don't talk about it very much, also legalizes other games in Indian casinos, such as roulette.
Pro-26 tribes fear they will lose revenue if 27 passes.
We feel like this would be a huge infringement on our brick and mortars if this were to pass.
But Walters said 85 to 90% of the revenue they currently make is from slot machines. The physical aspect of pulling the lever.
It's almost a whole game.
He said it's a separate younger male base that will generate revenue for online sports betting or in person. The question should be who will get billions on top of the billions they are already making.
They say it's unsafe now, but in 2024, in just 2 years, when it's their initiative, they'll be totally fine with it. That's obviously incredibly hypocritical and shows exactly why they're opposing our initiative.
In a Sacramento Press Club debate with both Proposition 26 and 27 campaigns, Kathy Fairbanks with Proposition 26 said that the tribes who are backing the in-person only initiative this year are also backing an initiative in 2024 for online sports wagering, but run through the tribes instead of large out-of-state operations.
Mobile sports betting is something that people want. Again, we want to start slowly and responsibly.
People can vote yes on both.
To the extent that they're in conflict with each other, the one that has the most votes will prevail. There'll probably be some court battles.
No on both, or yes on one of them and no on the other.
It's not going to go away. If both of these measures are defeated, I think we'll be back in in the 2024 ballot with at least one more measure.
So gear up for billboards, TV, and radio advertisements. These campaigns have already outspent every other initiative in California history because the win is worth the bet.
Well, as you can see, there are a lot of factors that are playing into this. So we're going to take a quick break. Morgan is sticking around to answer some more questions when we come back. Welcome back. Before the break, political reporter Morgan Reiner, she broke down all of the details behind Prop 26 and 27, two items that are on the November ballot that deal with legalizing sports betting. Probably just saw one of those ads during the break. Morgan, my first question for you, though, how are these props doing in the polls right now?
The most recent polls from UC Berkeley show that neither of them are doing too hot in the polls right now. When it comes to Proposition 27, the online initiative, voters put no 53% of the time. Yes, 27% of the time. For Proposition 26, in person, voters put no 42% of the time. And yes, 31% of the time. Now, in an event in Vegas just last week, you had representatives from both propositions, the tribes and FanDuel and DraftKings, talking about how they understand their propositions would likely fail. The representatives for FanDuel and DraftKings were talking about how the confusion between both propositions and the fact that the majority of the casino tribes are against their online initiative is the reason why it will likely fail.
And before we go, I want to ask you, too, because you mentioned the homeless sweetener. How do homeless advocates feel about this as well?
Well, first, Governor Gavin Newsom himself weighed in on this proposition, saying to Californians to read through the lines, that this is not a homeless initiative. Now, the San Francisco Chronicle, they actually did a deeper dive and spoke to homeless advocates across the state. Many of them said that they were nervous about attaching themselves to a political proposition such as this one.
All right, Morgan, I guess we'll see what happens come election night.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.